Hi class, this is Claudette, and this is my entertainment video. My cat is behind me. He decided to want to lay down and get attention, so I hope he just lays there, but if he moves, that's him. Um, for my forms of entertainment, I chose the form of film, specifically romantic comedies, and for my concepts, I chose high context and body language. I felt romantic comedies have a lot of this as an example to work off of. For the films I'm comparing the French film Amelie with the American film The Ugly Truth. I guess quick ideas on what these films are. In Amelie, it follows a girl named Amelie and how she kind of helps others throughout the film and in the end helps herself when she falls in love. In The Ugly Truth, it follows a girl named Abby who's a producer and how she meets this guy named Mike, and basically his show The Ugly Truth gets brought into her, I guess, channel or segment, and they work together and end up falling in love, even though they kind of had a rocky start. In terms of how my concepts relate to these films, I guess I can start with body language. So in The Ugly Truth, Mike and Abby go dancing at some point, and after dancing, they get through an elevator where they kind of have this awkward interaction where they have to say goodbye at some point when they get to their level, and they kind of hesitate, and that hesitation and kind of awkwardness communicates to each other that they do like each other, and then they end up kissing and all that. In Amelie meets a man named Dufayel. He's an older man that lives in, I think, her same building, and they kind of get along and start talking to each other about people and pretty much just life and feelings. And Dufayel is very, very keen on knowing people's facial expressions and how they react, and pretty much just wants to know their body language when it comes to when they talk about these events that she may have experienced. Um, and he's also an artist who paints, so I think that also contributes to why he's very into facial expressions. When it comes to high context, with The Ugly Truth, after dancing and meeting each other at the elevator and all that, the man Mike decides to tell Abby that he loves her, but then is kind of taken aback when he goes to her hotel room and she was actually surprised by the man she was seeing, and he answers the door, so he switches the idea of telling her that he loves her to changing it with talking about how their flight had changed, and she kind of got the hint that he did not really mean that through his body language. And I thought that was a good example of high context because he didn't have to particularly say what he really said for her to understand that, oh, this isn't really what I mean to say. And she takes a hint on that, and then they talk afterwards, and the whole story kind of just moves on. But in Amelie, a good example of high context is this painting. So Dufayel has a painting that he paints each year, and he says that the hardest thing that he cannot figure out is how to paint this one person's face in the painting, and it's this woman and her facial expression. He says he can't get the right emotion out of it. So along the way, Amelie kind of talks about how she, of her opinion on what the girl's, I guess, emotion and facial expression should be, and Dufayel quickly takes that hint that she's actually talking about herself and her feelings and emotions. And I thought that was also a really great not concept, but great example of that concept, the high context. Um, with the films, the two similarities I had noticed. Both have female leads, and another similarity is the fact that these two leads kind of have a form of alienation. So Amelie feels very different from other women as she kind of grew up very differently. She had a rough childhood. In The Ugly Truth, Abby feels alienated because she's different from other girls in terms of being kind of a control freak, I guess is what they say in the film. Differences. A big difference I found in the films is how love is perceived. In Amelie, uh, love is kind of a symbol for happiness because when she falls in love, she in turn makes herself happy when throughout the movie she had been trying to make others happy. In The Ugly Truth, love is kind of just, I guess, very related to sex. Sex is a big theme in that movie, and um, I like that's just how I thought it was kind of perceived. It's kind of just that and how it relates to how men and women see each other, pretty much. My first impressions of the film for Amelie, I thought it was kind of complicated. All these scenes would kind of just pop by and it could get kind of confusing, but it was very easy to understand what was happening in the scene, and I guess that gets into my difficulty. So, difficulty wise, definitely it being French, it was kind of hard for me to, I guess, read and notice what was happening on the screen at the same time, since I did have to read the subtitles, and that's always been a struggle for me is reading and trying to actually watch the film and see all these little details that they add in. And then for easiness, I guess it was easy to tell what was happening in the scene, not exactly why it was happening until towards the end where you can kind of piece it together. For The Ugly Truth, I felt it was very blockbustery, definitely kind of a generic rom-com I'm used to, especially since it is an American rom-com. Um, for preference, I don't really think I have a preference. They're kind of different in a way. I think I like Amelie more just because it is deeper and it was kind of more fun to piece what was happening together to kind of understand the film. But in general, they're two very different movies, in my opinion. Amelie is more deep and more of kind of indie, more serious, versus The Ugly Truth being more comedic and more kind of laid back in terms of meaning, is kind of just there for entertainment versus Amelie, where there is a meaning to be brought out of. And that's kind of how I see those films. Hopefully that makes sense. And thank you for watching.